Young Wolf Media.
Hi and welcome to this video, the short history of Ryanair. Today Ryanair is one of the biggest airlines in Europe, but this wasn't always the case. The airline started from humble beginnings. Ryanair was founded by Tony Ryan, who has a very interesting history. He was one of Ireland's first billionaires. He achieved this by founding Guinness Peak Aviation, an aircraft leasing company. Besides Tony's own achievements in business, his two main achievements for the Irish business community are as follows. One, he helped make Ireland the world leader in aircraft leasing through the founding of Guinness Peak Aviation. Even today, over half the global aircraft leasing companies are based in Ireland. Tony Ryan's second achievement was mentoring Dennis O'Brien, founder of Digicel, and Michael O'Leary, the chief executive officer of Ryanair, both of whom became billionaires. And of course, we're going to talk about Michael O'Leary later on in the video. But now back to our story about Ryanair. Ryanair started its operations in 1985 in a semi-deregulated market with the aim of breaking the stranglehold on the London to Ireland flights at the time held by British Airways and Aer Lingus. It's worth noting before the time of deregulation, the airline markets were controlled by national airlines, and national airlines were in turn controlled by the national governments. For example, the major owner of Aer Lingus was the Irish government, and this was the way for each national airline. For example, Aer Lingus was controlled by the Irish government, Air France was controlled by the French government, and so on and so forth. Over the next 5 years, Ryanair's passengers numbers continued to increase. However, they were hemorrhaging money. They couldn't compete with the national airlines, who had many advantages, such as loyal customers, more brand awareness, economies of scale, and the national carriers were sometimes being subsidised by their national governments who were their owners. Michael O'Leary had returned from the US and was convinced that Ryanair could make huge inroads into the European market by copying the Southwestern Airlines business model. Southwestern Airlines competed with the major airlines in the US by providing a no-frills, low-cost service. So many of you may be thinking, what is the no-frills model? Basically, it's a way of running the airline as cheap as possible and passing the savings on to the customers. This is done in many different ways, such as scheduling flights into regional airports, which offer lower landing fees and handling charges, and quick turnaround times, so they can have more flights, having no business class, operating on a single model of aircraft, which gives you economies of scale, and not offering complimentary food, which was the norm at the time. Now, Ryanair's business model became very different to the Southwestern Airlines business model as time went on, which I'll talk about in another video. And the model worked for Ryanair. It started expanding and expanding to different destinations all across Europe, until it became the monster you now know. Ryanair's fares were sometimes over 80% cheaper than their rivals. Customers soon flocked in large numbers for these low fares. And for some of Ryanair's customers, it was their first time in their entire lives that they were able to afford to fly. Now, Ryanair's model of no frills is really part of their business model in every conceivable way. Their first website was built by two 17-year-old schoolboys from Dublin, Ireland, who built the website for the sum of £20,000. Now, let's talk about Ryanair's marketing. Ryanair's marketing can be summed up with this phrase: any publicity is good publicity, and there's no such thing as bad publicity. I will do a video on this concept at a later date. And from day one, Ryanair's Michael O'Leary has used any publicity he could get his hands on. One of Ryanair's first flights, he was a baggage handler, which got a lot of publicity. And I think one of the most famous examples of Ryanair's publicity was they were talking about charging people to use the toilets. And this got a lot of news coverage, as it's very controversial. And I should point out that he was never really going to do this. Now, while Ryanair are the biggest European airline, and it looks like they'll continue to be for a long time to come, there are dangers for Ryanair, as the business model they use is a low-cost model. Its dangers are the same to anyone who uses this model. If another competitor is able to come in, and in the long term, able to produce flights that are cheaper than Ryanair's, Ryanair will lose customers because their customers aren't loyal to Ryanair. They only go with them because the flights are cheap. And in fact, there was an article which showed that Ryanair were voted the worst airline for 6 years in a row. But as I said, Ryanair thinks any publicity is good publicity, so they would be happy with this bit of news. And for example, the Ryanair pilot strike shows that they have to be very careful where they cut the costs, because eventually it could come back and bite them. But the biggest lesson we can learn from Ryanair is in order to win a game, we have to do things differently. Like if Ryanair had just stayed with the same business model that they were doing before they started copying Southwestern Airlines, they would have went bankrupt within 10 years and no one would have heard them. So this is just in life in general. Don't be afraid to do things differently. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe, and see you next time.